Welcome back to the Red Wings Report with Strings and Pucks. This is Jeremy Laura. Detroit has some decisions to make. We talked about these three players, Finnie, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, Axel Sandin-Pellikka. They hit the ice last night. They've played 7 of 8 games, incredibly grueling preseason, and going into the night, here's what it kind of looked like on the outside looking in. It looked like Finnie had grabbed the spot that Carter Mazur was going to get, someone who can play bottom 6, who can get looks on the top line. He played under 13 minutes last night. No goals, no assists, even rating. It was a little bit of a quiet night for Finnie. Now the reason I thought going into it, again, that he had kind of locked down the spot was that his game is much more comparable to the game that Mazur plays at 200 feet. He has a gas tank. I mean, for playing 7 games in such short order, at one point the team had played 6 games in 8 nights. So they've crammed in so much action, and Finnie, from the drop of the puck at the Prospects game up until last night, he was just all over the place and doing everything they asked of him. He can make power moves skating, he can get to the net, but more importantly, he gets back, and he gets back quickly. So the team was really disjointed last night, obviously with all the goals that were let in, terrible breakdowns, especially early on. So Finnie kind of didn't stand out. And this morning, honestly, I don't know. And I think the question I'm going to ask on each of these 3 players is, are you better off with Finnie than blank? So pick your player, and I'll pick JT Compher, because they have Finnie playing at center, and Compher will do center and wing. So Finnie at center and wing. Are the Detroit Red Wings in a better place if Finnie's on the roster or if JT Compher's on the roster? It feels like I'd rather have Finnie than Compher on this roster, but let me know in the comments. Compher, he obviously has skills. He obviously can score. He set up the opening tally with Brandsegg-Nygard, and he has vision, but it just seems like he checks out so often. Finnie is completely motivated to be here. And going into last night, I thought he had locked down a position that they had wanted Carter Mazur to get. Now, Mazur and Danielson, they're going to start in Grand Rapids and be high on the call-up list. But Finnie, to his credit, he's taken advantage of the opportunity created by injury, created by just a strong summer of training, and by playing 7 games in under 2 weeks, more than a game every other night, he has just shown that his gas tank is where it needs to be. So in my opinion, I would put Finnie on this team, absolutely. But going into last night, thinking he had a bit of an edge on Nygard, I now want to talk about MBN. So MBN, obviously, he had 2 goals, was listed as having 2 shots. He played 10:53. You talk about a player who makes his presence known. In under 11 minutes of play, you were very aware of Michael Brandsegg-Nygard on the ice. So here's what was being said by the coaching staff. They called him a bully on ice, and they walked it back a little bit, just saying his physicality. And when they compared him to Finnie, the coach essentially said, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard's already essentially a grown man out on the ice. Finnie's still going to fill out a bit more, but MBN is already pretty solid. And when he goes to the dirty areas, he doesn't leave. Meaning, 1, he's not afraid to fight for the puck, fight for positioning, and 2, he can physically interact with NHL players. That's something Detroit is so lacking on, and something they were looking at Carter Mazur for, physicality, that all of a sudden last night it felt like it flipped. And by the end of the game, by the end of the night, the way Todd McLellan, is talking, you would think that MBN grabbed a spot. So here's what I like about Brandsegg-Nygard's game. First, his shot. I think he has a unique shot to anyone on the team, and he can use it anywhere on the ice, whether he's back on the circles on a power play on his off wing, he's in the slot, literally on the goal line. He can get a stick on a tip. Somehow at 6'1" and plenty of bulk, he slips past defenders and gets to quiet areas. This guy is way too big to be able to be unnoticed on the ice, but somehow MBN slides into a quiet area to get a shot off. And his shot is unique and really something I think the team would benefit for. So just like with Emmett Finnie, I'm going to say, is the team better off with Brandsegg-Nygard? I used Comfer as a comparable, and I'm trying to think of any other winger. Essentially, to me, Brandsegg-Nygard is going to get looks on that Larkin line, and we're still trying to figure out where Van Riemsdyk fits in, and that's kind of gumming up the works a little bit. I think you're better off with Brandsegg-Nygard on this team and putting a veteran on waivers. Again, the same with Finnie. And the way McLellan was talking, they are so impressed at his physicality, the way he plays the game, especially in the offensive zone. But he doesn't get bullied around. And the Red Wings, for the past several years, get manhandled. And there's no one to answer the bell. Now, we've seen more guys stepping up, but Brandsegg-Nygard came to this camp. If you remember at the very beginning of the summer, he said, I'm not coming to get an AHL job. I'm coming to take an NHL job. So I thought his attitude, he had the swagger, everything you need. But last night, there was something a little different. When they're interviewing MBN in the locker room, he was emotional and worn out. He hadn't slept the night before. Him and Sandin-Pellikka are sharing a hotel room, and all they did was talk about making the team. And he seemed to get borderline emotional talking about how badly he wants to be in the NHL. And I feel like he left everything on the ice. And if this is a true competition where we're really looking at these guys and saying your performance in camp in the preseason dictates if you have a job or not, I would have a hard time telling Brandsegg-Nygard he didn't have a spot in the NHL right now. So that's my thoughts on that. He doesn't just have swagger. He's so passionate about being a Detroit Red Wing. And there are too many guys on the team that don't seem that way. They don't share that passion. And then McLellan talked about Finnie and Brandsegg-Nygard in this sense as well. The veterans like these guys. They're welcoming them. I guess it can be a little standoffish when a young guy's trying for a job. It's not the case right now. So I think if you're really serious about letting guys know you have to fight for a spot, I would put both Finnie and Brandsegg-Nygard on this team and put veterans on waivers. And that may be destructive of me to say. Let me know in the comments what you think. And finally, Sandin-Pellikka. Of this group of three, there is no bigger surprise than Sandin-Pellikka from this standpoint. I was convinced that he would need months in the AHL to adapt to the North American game. Yet every single game, he seems more and more visible. And he cares about being here again, the same as Finnie and Brandsegg-Nygard. So last night, I'm just going to pull up his numbers. Sandin-Pellikka, 17:47, so almost 18 minutes on ice. That's pretty impressive. Bernard Docker had 14:01. Johansson had 14:20. So they gave Sandin-Pellikka nearly 18 minutes on ice. He had 2 assists, -1, and honestly, how he manages the puck compensates for some skating and physicality issues. And now I'm just having to step back and say, okay, if you let Axel Sandin-Pellikka on this team, and let's say you're putting him on the third pairing, not the second. Somebody brought up the argument of getting more reps and more minutes in Grand Rapids, and this is the first time I think I've seen this. McClellan said that was sort of a bad assumption to make, that was better, that they can grow their game in the NHL and grab other opportunities while they're here. And that really stood out to me, because this team, if you've been a Red Wings fan for the past 20 years, 30 years, that's never the way they talk about young players with minutes. It's always best to get the reps down in Grand Rapids. Well, based on what McClellan said, and if I'm just standing back, do I think this team is better off having Sandin-Pellikka slotted for the third pairing or the second pairing? But do I think they're better off with him over Hall, over Gustafsson, and over Hamonic? Because those guys are all kind of fighting for spots. Again, I have a hard time saying no. I think this team is better off with Sandin-Pellikka than with Hall, with Gustafsson, and honestly, with Hamonic, it's tough. I mean, you might be rotating those guys, but based on what we're seeing and based on what this kid's going to be able to do, I'd put one of those veterans on waivers. I wouldn't even hesitate to put Hall on waivers, if I'm being completely honest. I think Hall's signing has been a disappointment, and Sandin-Pellikka is showing that he can do so much more. And if his game needs some help, you can rotate him out. You can, put him in the box, have him watch. But at this point, right now, after last night's game, all three of those guys have killed themselves to get a spot on this team. Playing a schedule they're not going to have in the regular season. They're not, six games in 8 days. Actually, this year they may have something close to that, but I think all three of them have made their case, and I think you can find a veteran that you're looking at putting on waivers and say, if it's between the two of you, this young guy's grabbed a spot. They have to make that decision, and here's where it's tricky. If they put Jonathan Berggren on waivers, I think he'll get picked up. I think you're going to lose that player. You put Comfer on waivers, I don't think you lose that player. And even if you did, you're moving on from 3 years, 3 more seasons of something that's just not aging well. So I don't see a downside to putting Comfer and Hall on waivers and putting these guys on the team. But now I need to know what you guys think. Did they do enough to grab an NHL job, or at least start the season here getting an 8 to 10 game look and risk losing a veteran to waivers? Let me know, and we're going to find out soon enough. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. The channel continues to grow daily. This is going to be a great season. Hockey Hot Stove is still down. I don't want to go into why, but the hosting company is having some trouble with the migration because the site has grown so much. As soon as that's up, there will be some tweets and announcements. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon.